So we thought we'd start off with a very simple question for everybody. What is a hotel? And I mean, it is a simple question, but is it so simple as to say it's just a bed that's for hire? I mean, sure, hotels have beds, but if we were to throw a mattress into the middle of a field and call it a hotel, I think we would have some very disappointed customers, even if the view is as beautiful as that. So it's got to be something more than that. So I hear people probably thinking in the audience, well, it's all about the service. And sure, I mean, service is a very big part of everything that we do in hospitality. But we also see examples of hotels in Bangkok everywhere where service is not necessarily an essential part of the experience that's delivered, and yet we still call them hotels. So it's maybe something even more than just a bed and the service. And maybe it's just that very experience of checking in and checking out. That's not something that we tend to do too often outside of the hotel space. But even that experience is changing, and in many cases it's being removed as digital technology takes over, and that's certainly something, that check-in, check-out is something we'll come back to in a moment. So what is a hotel? It's a very simple question. I mean, it is a simple question. Everyone in this room knows what a hotel looks like. But it's an important question, because I think if we can ask a question like this, we can actually break a hotel or whatever it is down to its most basic, most fundamental assumptions. And then if we have those fundamental assumptions, we can start to challenge those assumptions. We can start to innovate.
So what we're here today to talk about is disruption and innovation, two words that are often used interchangeably, but actually mean quite different things. Disruption is what we can describe as an interruption, a disturbance. It's someone else's innovation. Innovation is different. It's something new. It meets a consumer need. And our favorite definition is disobedience with a happy ending. The two are connected, though. Often a disruption leads to an innovation, and we've seen this through history. If you look back to the early 2000s and the SARS crisis, we can see that led to the birth of e-commerce in China and the likes of Alibaba. If we turn our attention to the global financial crisis of 2008, we can see it gave birth to the sharing economy and Uber. So the big question, of course, is now. We have this major disruption, this major disturbance in COVID-19. What's the innovation? What's it going to look like? And what does it mean for us here in Thailand in the hospitality industry? How do we ensure that we end up in that winner's circle? And how do we get there?
So I think we're all very much aware of what the disruption has been, obviously. I mean, I think for everybody in this room, it's been a very difficult time, obviously. But I think it's also been a rather hopeful time, because we've seen, everybody in this room, whether it's brands, hotels, whatever it might be, actually start to try new things, to actually start to attempt to innovate, to try and do things that may not have been possible in normal times. And that is a hopeful thing. I mean, whether that's a national flag carrier opening, what proved to be one of the hottest street food stores in Bangkok. I mean, who would have thought that would have happened 12 months ago? Whether it's hotels like the Kimpton, like many others we know that have run work from hotel programs, effectively transforming the guest room into a flexible workspace, again, almost removing the bed from the hotel experience. Or, whether it's hotels that have attempted to, innovate around the idea of a day rate altogether and actually offer subscriptions, annual subscriptions to their hotels that allow guests to use that hotel as much or as little as they want. So we've seen attempts at innovation, we've seen brands try new things, and whether those have been successful or not is not really the point. The point is we've seen innovation. So it's probably not too much of a surprise, I should say, that when we asked about 100 people in Thailand over the last couple of weeks, some of whom are in this room, how innovative they perceive the Thai hospitality industry to be, the results were, not too bad. It's a passing mark, right? So it's not too surprising, but I think the fundamental question that we're driving at today is how do we go that last little bit? How do we go that final mile? And not only how do we cover that distance and make sure that we're innovating, but how do we make sure we're doing it in a way that is meaningful and is actually going to drive value for our brands? And I think the more we looked back on it and kind of looked at brands that are responsible for some of the biggest and most important innovations of recent memory, it really comes down to three fundamental qualities: empathy, imagination, and conviction. And I think the way that we can instill those qualities into our own brands, into our own operations, is to ask three simple questions. What is, what if, and why?
So let's start with the first question, what is? What is asks us about the present. It asks us to consider some basic assumptions about our brand, and more importantly about our consumer, about our audience. Who is our target audience? What is their need? What are they looking for? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they fearing? And who is that person? So let's turn our attention back to the survey. So here in Thailand, we sought to find out who is our consumer and what are they looking for. 71% are attracted by innovation. That's great. And then we dug a bit deeper. What are their priorities when they're traveling? Pre-COVID, this is what they said. We can see comfort and indulgence pretty high up there in the terms of priorities. We asked them to think again, okay, post-COVID, what are their priorities? And we can see some interesting changes. Suddenly, comfort and indulgence is not so important. Suddenly, things like health and well-being, safety and security, and perhaps even affordability are much higher up that list. And it gets even more interesting. We asked them about the guest journey. Where on the guest journey would they like to see innovation? In-room tech, check-out, and check-in, and F&B. And I want you to keep your eye on that idea of check-in and check-out, because it comes up again here. Finally, we asked them to rank their choice from a list of recent innovations. So just to pick one from this list of recent innovations that we've seen in various degrees in the hospitality industry over the last year or two. The first ones really were pretty lukewarm, not much interest. And then we get to the last one. Flexible check-in and check-out. Over 50% of respondents chose this as the most interesting innovation, the most relevant innovation to them in the last couple of years.
So, I mean, by doing this, we've shown a little empathy. I think we've started to, we've asked what is, we've started to uncover, I think, at least at a very high level, a basic consumer need that I think the hotel industry is currently, not necessarily filling in the way it should be. So the next step in the process is, again, to show that imagination, or to ask, what if? So again, what if I have a midnight flight and I just know that my hotel is going to allow me to check out at 10 p.m. It's not going to be an issue. They're not going to enforce an arbitrary checkout time. Or, we take it further. What if I didn't even have to book a hotel by the number of nights I stay, but maybe by the number of hours or 3-hourly blocks, so that I'm actually only paying for what I use, and that hotel is going to fulfill my needs. Of course, we can take it further. I mean, it can get pretty extreme if we only ask these two questions: what is, and what if? So I think that's why the third question becomes, in many ways, the most important.
So the third question is around purpose. What is your why? What is your purpose? What is your conviction? All brands, as we know, and we just heard earlier, need a conviction. They need that underlying purpose. They need to keep asking why. Because if you don't ask why, some weird stuff starts happening. You end up with innovations that really don't make sense. A survey last year of 10,000 respondents across 4 continents found that consumers were 4 times more likely to purchase from a brand with a strong purpose, and 6 times more likely to stay loyal to that brand in a challenging time. So I think the underlying message here is, if you have a purpose, if you build a brand from purpose rather than simply about what you do, you laid that foundation for innovation.
So empathy, imagination, and conviction. I think, understanding that consumer need, really deeply understanding what it is that your target guest actually needs. Having the courage, I think, to be creative and to challenge those fundamental assumptions that define the industry that we all work in. And conviction, having that clarity of purpose that's really going to transcend the mere product and service that it is that we're offering. If we have those 3 qualities, if we ask those 3 simple questions: what is, what if, and why, I think we can start to all of us, we can start to look forward rather than looking back, to make sure that we're innovating rather than iterating. And that's obviously going to be extremely important once tourism does start to resume in Thailand, because we know that consumer needs are changing. We need to be looking forward, and we need to be anticipating what those are. So we need to ask those 3 fundamental questions. And I think if we do that united, every single person in this room, whether it's from the hotel level all the way up to the destination branding level for Thailand, if we can ask those 3 questions, we can turn this crisis into an opportunity for Thailand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.